Okay, hi all. It's 7 o'clock. I think we can start today's stream. And today I will be talking about that will be the second part of the JS basics, and that is data types. And if you hear me and you can see my screen, could you just let me know in the chat? Yes. Okay, fine. Thank you. So let's jump into the presentation. So this is a Rolling Scope School presentation. And my name is Paweł Leśniowski. I'm a software engineer at EPAM, and I'm a front-end developer. Today we'll be talking about JavaScript data types. And in the very beginning, I will give you a short introduction what actually is data type. JavaScript is a dynamically typed language, and we can also hear about that there are languages which are strongly typed. So what is the difference? If we go to see any language, like for example, this is some Dart language, some code of the Dart language. So we can see here that, for example, if we have a function, this is just a function. In the syntax, it's very similar to JavaScript's function. We have opening function, we have some parameters. This is the name of the function. And let's don't bother about this body of the function for now. Just this is like regular function. However, you can see there are some annotations here. And these annotations are the types. So that language and many strongly typed languages required us to specify what the function or the parameter actually is. So here we have, this is the name of the function, and here is num. It means that this function will be returning number. And here is, for example, the return statement, and we have 4 in return. If we change this into some kind of string, we'll receive information, instant feedback that there is something wrong. And here is the statement. I don't know if you can see this. I cannot enlarge this, but it says that a value of type string cannot be returned from function because it has a return type of num. It it means that this function just cannot work like this. So this is how it works in a different language. This means that this function is typed. Let's see, here we have map. This is basically an object in this language. So, but this object, this map is typed. This is just the syntax. Don't be scared about this. It changes up to the language. Here, the types are like this. So here it says that this map should have key value pairs as a string and integer, which is a number. So if we add something like key, which will be 4, and here will be a string, we will receive that this is incorrect. So if we change this into the string, now it's fixed. It fulfills this information here, this type, and here is the error because we have here integers as a type, but we actually put here a string. So now it's working. We don't see any. So basically, this is typing. Of course, this is not only one thing which we can type. We also can have our own types. So for example, we can specify that the object we are be receiving inside the function will have some particular shape. Here there's a type of map. So this is actually embedded in the language. That collection should be a map. And if we send here anything else than a map, it will complain with the error. So this is how the language look like. I will show. So here, for example, the typing is like prefixes the, for example, function or variable name. In TypeScript, let's take a look on the TypeScript. It looks a bit different, but it does the same thing. So here, for example, okay, we have any. Any means this can be any type. So this is like a escape hatch. If we are not able to say what type that will be any. So just quick, and here we have example. We are creating here let be, and this part is TypeScript part. So this is like enhancing. This is JavaScript without this annotation, but we here enhancing this with a type annotation. So TypeScript, it's not a language itself. It's like gives us the possibility to type the JavaScript. Just quickly, I will take a look if everything is okay with the connection. Nobody is complaining. All right. And we can go back to presentation. So as we saw, JavaScript is a language which is dynamically typed, which means that we don't specify here that this is number, and it doesn't stay with this variable. So this variable we can change. So here we define this will be 5, and then if we check the type with the type of operator, that will be the number. Then we will assign a string, that will be string. If we assign this right now to array, that will be type of, and that will be an array. In the development, this is actually not very good thing, because it can prone many errors, that we just passing something which is different than we are expecting to the functions. So that's why TypeScript is so popular and very widely used. If we type something in the typed language or TypeScript, if we change the type, if we try to assign something to a typed variable, it will give us an error. So that would be the quick introduction, what is typing in the language. And now we can go to the types in the JavaScript. So as I said, they are dynamically assigned to variables. So we have primitive types, and they are like undefined. Null is a type, but one here thing which we need to mention, that null actually is a bug in the language, that if we type off instance of null, we'll see the object, but this is actually a bug in the language, in the JavaScript, and everybody knows about this, or should know about that bug, but it's right now, because there are so many programs written already in the JavaScript, if they try to fix this, that would break a lot of applications. So we just stick to this. But for example, yeah, here's like small explanation. If we have a variable which we assigned a null value, A is not instance of the object. So this is one of the way how we can check if this is actually an object. We also have Boolean type, we have number type, we have string type, we have big int type, and we have symbol type. Here is how we check this. So the instance is actually the variable name. So if we assign, for example, false to A, that would be type of A equals Boolean, and that would be, I mean, the return value of this, because type of operator returns a value, and it would return Boolean. String, always string. Type of returns always string. But I mean the string which describes the type. Okay, so actually, sorry, this is what I should have done before. Okay, so strings, we have strings. Strings are quite simple data types. What is worth mentioning that they are immutable. So if we, for example, if we have, I'll show you in the console. So this is string, and if we try in some way change this string, for example, trying to do this to uppercase, for example, this A won't be changed. Function we need to invoke. So this returns a string, however, the string itself is not changed, and we cannot mute the string. If we, for example, want to do anything with this string, we need to assign this. So yeah, that would be the way how we can deal with the strings. So right now, the outcome of this is can have actually changed string. So every time we do something with the string, it just assigned to the new place in the memory of our memory. So other things about strings, we have a length property on the string. So here, okay, I didn't copy that. Here we have mice s. It's just a variable for the string, so it has a property of the length. We can also loop over the string. Here we are looping the string itself. Let's go to the console because I didn't copy the whole thing. And now if we do for loop for So here we are looping over the indexes of the string. So because for loop will be going over the indexes. So here we have like it's like in the array, and we can use also for off loop. And here we have A, B, C, which are the letters. And we also can access string members as we do with in the arrays. We have these indexes, and our string was called string 3. And if we do like this, yeah, this is A from our string. Okay, the next type is a number. In JavaScript, we have 40-bit float number. It means that we have some particular space devoted for numbers. Numbers are also immutable. They are copied by value, and we declare them like this. Let the name, and we just give the name of the we just give them the value. Before I said that we have like 64 bits for number, it means that we have limited space for them. And when we have very large numbers, we have this limit of the memory. So this is the biggest safe number we can use in JavaScript with the number type. And for example, then it becomes very weird behavior. For example, if we have here the x, which is equal to this number, and we try to add 1, for example, because of the lack of memory, exactly, like they kind of try the JavaScript try to kind of round the last numbers, and it just we just receiving improper values just because of the lack of the next memory. So so this is the number. With help can come quite recent integer, which we called big int. It's another type which kind of can help us, and it looks like this. So if we declare anything, any big int, let's call this like this, and we can actually specify as many numbers as we want, but this data type requires us to put an n letter at the end. And now we have a correct number. And if we want to add something to anything to this, we need to remember also that this requires from us big int can only be added to another big int type. And as you can see, this is working. The limitation of this, but it's more like visual limitation, that we have only here integers. So for example, we cannot have this decimal after, like we cannot have. So it doesn't work like this. It doesn't work like this. So because there are only integers can be started in here. So converting to numbers. So we can use a number function, which will take a string, for example, and try to convert to number. If this number function will come across some additional sign which doesn't know what it means, it will return not a number. Not a number is it's invalid number, basically. Not a number is also type of number, but we need to just remember that this is actually a number, but invalid number. We can also use parseInt function, or the plus sign will also do the trick and change string, for example. Very often we receive from a server, for example, when we are fetching some data, very often the numbers are strings. So this is like valid number, but with this braces, and this is as a string. So we don't expect something happened like this in these strings, because we know that the backend will send the proper number in the string. So we can just do the plus operator, and it will change the into the number type. So not a number stands for not a number. It just this is being created by JavaScript engine when it tries to parse something which is gibberish and is not able to create a number of this. It will return this not a number. On the other hand, if we want to change, for example, a number to string, we can, this is like the opposite of this. When we have number, we can just use the function string, or there is on the number, there is a method to string, for example, and we can use this, or we can use this bit weird syntax where we just add empty string to a number, and this is this will be a string then from the number. Booleans are used in the programming for some kind of flags, and this flag, it's like Boolean can have only two values, true or false. It means that you can have this kind of as a flag. I kind of name that this may be like a switch, for example, like literally switch. If you switch the light on or off, and for example, when you have some kind of pop-up, for example, on your application, and in the state of application, this pop-up it's not visible. It's set to not to be visible. So we usually give this the name for this Boolean is like is open, is visible, is something, which is kind of question, and we answer this with this false or true value. So so this is flag which kind of switch, turn and off some functionality in our applications. And if we try to convert some values to Boolean, because this happens very often. For example, in the if statements, to the if statement we give some data, and this data is not always true or false. If we, for example, have an array, and in this array there are, for example, items, and we want to just say that if there are items in this array, do the, for example, for loop of this and map this data. So we need to convert this data, like this input, to the Boolean value. And there are some values which are called falsy values and truthy values. So, for example, false, null, undefined, empty string, 0 and none, they are falsy values. And they are these are the only falsy values. The whole rest is truthy. So every time there are, I don't know if you, yes, I have this here. So I have here the if statement, and as an input, I put here an empty array, for example, but this can be a variable which is assigned to this array. But we want to do depend if the something depend on the if this array is empty or no, because if it's empty, there's no point of doing something. So how do you guys think? What will be the output of this lines of code? Will we get? Will we receive hooray or oops? How do you think? You can write in the chat. This is a quick question. So we have empty array, and I will just go back to our falsy and truthy values. So we have this as a falsy. So that these values, if we put to the if statement, they will result in false. And we have here this. How do you think? Do I have any? Hooray, hooray, hooray. Nice. Okay, so I won't be waiting any longer. Yes, exactly. And do you know how to actually make this working? Because this is not what we expected. We expected that if the array is empty, we shouldn't do this. So how we can fix this code so it actually displays oops, because we don't want to do anything. We want to get the falsy value there and do something else. We don't want to do anything here. Do you know how to fix it? You can write it. Do you have length, size, len? Yep. Size probably, I didn't use size, but size probably will work if there's, but here we have length bigger than 0. This is correct. I don't know if you put okay, so let's stay to Maciej's code because this is working. And oh my god, so I cannot edit this. Okay, so this is correct. However, you don't have to use the Maciej, you don't have to use this bigger or smaller notation. Yes, it's enough to put length, because length it will be 0 in our case, and 0 is a false value. In that case, we receive false. And there's another comment with exclamation mark. And exclamation mark actually won't here help, because it will just, as far as I know, if we have array, and array itself is truthy. So now we're receiving actually what is the value. We receive the true, and with exclamation mark we receive false, which is correct. Okay, good, very nice. I didn't use this exclamation mark in my code because this is actually kind of change the opposite, because if we actually receive true, if the array had something inside, it will still, yeah, we cannot do this because if we have yeah, because when we have, if we had something in the array, the behavior would be exactly the same. So it, but we want to have, if the array is with some items, we would receive, yeah, the false again, because this is truthy, something inside is truthy, and then we will receive just false. Okay, thank you. Good job, guys. Falsy. Yes, hooray, and false. This is yeah, I wrote this, but this is actually not good syntax to use here. Okay, convert to Boolean. So how can we convert to Boolean? We can use this. This is a function which will receive, where we get the Boolean value from this. This one, it's commonly used. So we're kind of receiving the same we still receive true or false value, but it will be converted to the Boolean. And this one I found the most common, and actually this is this is the way to get the Boolean, because you're still receiving the same kind of Boolean, true or false, but you're making sure that this is Boolean. You don't have to use it if you expect that something is for sure Boolean. If you know that in your expression you won't receive some kind of object or variable, you just receive a Boolean. There's no point of doing this double exclamation marks. And this syntax, it was brought to the language in the very beginning when they wanted to just have something similar to Java. So they created this operator new, and this function returns actually an object which is Boolean, and we shouldn't use it. So don't use this Java kind of syntax. Variable declaration. Yes, so we just went over all the types for primitive types. Now I had something to cover. It's like variable declaration is we have variable, let and const. Not sure. Yes. So an older way where we didn't care if we will be reassigning this A to something. Let B, it means let means that we will be assigning something, and we can keep assigning something different. So we can change the value of we can change the reference. Actually, I will talk about this later, but yeah, we can change the assignment to something different, and we have const C, and this will return an error because we need to initiate the const variable, because we can right now that would be we can only one time assign something to C. And this is how it works. So this is declaration with assignment. So this is only declaration. This is declaration with assignment. The same thing. Singular. There's also pattern which I saw in older tutorials, in older, yeah, mostly in older some documentation when we have singular var pattern. It means that we don't put var keyword in front of all of our variables, but we just separate them with the commas. And in this sense, we are receiving three variables with assignment, but I don't see too many benefits of this syntax. If you really want to like understand this, you can go follow this link. But I read this and I didn't find this beneficial. And I would say I actually also didn't see this, that in the production code. And here again, we don't use this new keyword syntax in JavaScript. There's only one, I would say, maybe there are few cases where we use it. And first, if we write something in the older syntax, so before classes, we want to... Someone just got unmuted. Okay, thank you. So to create variables, we don't use the new keyword. There are some exceptions for this. Before classes, when we were creating objects from function, and we had this function constructor, which would just return an object for us. We would use the new, but this is actually like our function. We wrote that function, and we just creating objects from this function. So when we call a function with the new operator in front, we're receiving an object from this function. This function will return an object. And this is done by JavaScript engine. If you are interested in this, and this is actually how the language itself is still working. We still, under the hood, we can write classes, but under the hood there's still function which create the objects, and classes are only syntactic sugar on top of this. So it's good to understand this pattern. Okay, now we have type of operator, and type of operator returns string indicating the type of the evaluated operand. Basically means that type of, then the variable name, and we receive a string which indicates the type. And here are some types. So if something is undefined, type of will return string undefined. Null is object, it's a bug, and the rest, as you can see. So function, it's also considered as a function is also considered as an object, but type of returns function. But actually, function is just some particular kind of object. It is called callable object. But you don't have to think too much about that function is object. Function is just a thing which is working, and the fact that this is object doesn't change too much in our code. How actually this is working, because we don't have here an array. If we go to the array is also an object. And how is it that the function, the object itself, and the array is object? You will learn when you will be studying the prototypical inheritance. So they we have like on the top we have object, and then we have this tree, and the derived types are like function, and we have array there. So but this is how the language itself is working, and this is you will fully understand this when you will go to the lecture of the prototypical inheritance, and you see the tree. Okay, I think type of is quite clear. So what will be the outputs of this? This is a question to you guys. What are the outputs of these two lines of code? So what will be here? So what will be the output, and what will be here? We have operated. Only the difference is we have here this strict operator, and I don't remember how was the not strict operator called. Yeah. So I hope that they put the answers in the comment. I will check. True, 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 true. Yeah. Yeah, you are right. You're very good. Guys, this is of course true because we this is actually a number, but we'll receive here a string, and type of string is string. Yeah, that was easy. I understand. Yes, someone unmuted, but okay. So primitives as objects. There's this concept of primitives as objects. And actually, if you create and then you go for type of number, it will be an object. However, this is incorrect way of creating objects. You shouldn't do this. Every documentation says so. Objects behave different, and even though that you received this, and you have number. Okay, but we have 0. Let's go. This is how we create. We are actually passing a value here. So num, it will be an object with a value of 22. We can get the value probably like num, some kind of value of. No, yeah, value of is a function which will return the value. So we kind of have this ability, but we don't code like this, and we don't use this like this. One thing worth mentioning here is the fact. Maybe let me get rid of the and so one thing which is kind of confusing is that my num. So when we're creating my num, and we put like this, just assignment of the number. So my number actually, how do we access properties on the object with the dot notation? And look at that. So this is like a primitive, just a primitive, and here we have actually access to many things which are like an object. So how does it work? So the explanation is that this is done automatically by JavaScript, that when we try to do something with this notation, they are on the fly for one moment, they behave like object. The variable is kind of boxed into an object and has on all these properties on it. However, this is just how the language itself helps us to deal with the primitive values. But this is actually not an object, but it behaves right now like an object in the sense that we have possibility to just operate on this. And for example, to string. So yeah, so we just converted this to the string. Yes, that would be the behaving like an object and creating like objects with the new operator, but we don't do this. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. So here is a small part of the, if you want to if we doing this conversion between strings, strings, numbers, and we want to convert something to Boolean. So this is there are some tricky, but there are much more of them. So we just should know that false, for example, if we convert false to number, it becomes 0. If we convert string, it will be just it will look like this. They are not the things you need to like memorize in anyhow. This is the things when you actually are like writing your code and you just face this kind of problem that you may receive, for example, 0 as a string. You just want to check how that would be converted into some particular values. It's funny that not a number is actually false. Yeah. There are still things which surprise not only like beginner programmers, but even experienced programmers. They still look up for these things. So don't memorize the things, just know that you need to find them. So dynamic nature of the language. This slide is unnecessary here. Dynamic nature of our typing. That was just dynamic nature of our how the types are dynamically assigned to the variables. So objects. So objects are not primitive types. So this is the not primitive type. They are constructed by key value pairs. They are called also properties. Quite important thing is that lookup time in the object is 1. So every time we look up for something in the object, the time complexity is 1. So if you, for example, solve some kind of algorithm, this is quite important. Sometimes we convert array into object, and then, for example, looking for some information there. They are also comparing by reference. And reference, it means that they are not compared by value. So I will give you an example. So for example, if we have this, there are like 2 equal objects. For example, inside will be the a value is 3 and a it's 4. That will be false. No, that's assignment. So this is of course false. However, if we go like this, that will be false again, because this object is in the different place in the memory than this one. And this is how we compare. If we, for example, wanted to compare them by value like this, it's a bit tricky. And it, of course, doesn't matter. Like, if we want to compare them like by value, it's actually a bit tricky. The NPM packages for this. We can also like stringify this and then compare strings. We can also, for example, if this object is very it's a nested object, we can also write a recursive function which will be just going into every single thing, and then it will just check piece by piece. But mostly, if I encounter this thing in the in my code, I would just use some well-defined npm package, which would just we will be just passing these objects to this package, and it will be just giving us the result. And another thing about objects is that you know that const, and if you have const, it's very often and if I ask, for example, what is the difference between const and let, many people tend to answer that we cannot change the value of this object, for example. But actually, we can. And now our object is free. So, and there's no complaining about the constant, because constant means actually not that we cannot change this, it means that we cannot change this assignment. So this assignment says that we are pointing to some place in the memory where this object lives. And if we change something inside the object, it doesn't change. The place doesn't change in the memory. It's still in the same spot. And this is reference. We are referencing to this slot of memory. I hope this is understandable. No questions here. Any? Okay, objects. Let's go back to presentation. So objects in JavaScript. So as I mentioned before, I will start from the end of here. Let's talk about these two. So there are also objects, and I said about new, keyword new, used in this construction pattern. And here are also this is allowed, and this is how we create data or errors. If we create error and new, we use this operator here. That's totally fine. Objects are also functions, arrays, and objects itself. And this is how you actually, this is the best way how you create object, an array. You basically, this is literal way how you create objects and arrays without any new operators. This is very much JavaScript syntax, and this is the best way. Now, how we can iterate over objects. So we can use for in loop, and we will receive ABC. If we try to use for off loop, this won't work because the objects are not iterable, so we cannot iterate them with this loop. I'm not exactly sure why this works, but this doesn't. But to get actually a values here we are getting the keys. A, B, C is actually a key. So to get the same result as when we try to iterate over values, we can use the same function, the same loop for in, but we use this key to access particular value on the object. So AAA is it's a name of this object, and this is a key. This is the way how we also can access the properties on the object. And there are also kind of method. Object.keys. This is a method on the object, and if we put an object to this method, we receive keys of the of this object. So the country. It will be the every key that is just an array, and we're iterating of this array, and this array contains all the keys from the object. I can give you an example. Maybe I don't sound very clear. And this object.keys is a very popular way to get into the object and just iterate over it. And yeah, let's say this. Object. This is actually a object. Is like a func. Let's see. Yeah, is object, and it's a function, but has like an object properties on it, which we can just reach and object 32. Let me get rid of. And we will assign this to, and in return we are receiving case of object. So case of object, we're receiving an array, and this is actually very good because when we have these keys, we can do a lot of things with the object because it's just enough to write. So we have access to all the properties on the object like this. So we know that there's this A 22. Let's see. This probably won't work because A won't be variable. Yeah. But we are receiving exactly what we want. Here we are receiving an array with an array. We have many ways how we can iterate of this array. I will show you when we get to the arrays. So key of object.keys is very important. There are also different methods on the object. I think you should go to the documentation and see all these possibilities. Like there are lots of very useful methods on the object, which can give a lot of from the object you want to work on. This is property accessors. It's basically how we can access properties on the object. We can pass strings, for example, as this is assignment. So we assigning to our object some properties, and we the same way can access this. of course, dot notation also is working for this. So we can go with square brackets to get objects properties, and we can go with dot notation. But here we need to remember that this actually needs to be string. Computed properties. So when we're creating objects, we can specify that the property will be defined dynamically. So here we have object, we have field 1, field 2 in the standard way, and here actually we have string interpolation. It has like field, and then there's like a variable name which is free, and as output we are receiving this key which was computed here. Okay, now we're going to, so the few ways how we can define arrays, and so this one is Java's work with this syntax. We can store a lot of different types in the arrays. Array has this length property. And like kind of important thing, it's basic but important, that the indexes start from 0 here. I made a lot of mistakes in the very beginning. I knew that there's a 0, but I constantly was doing this mistake. So this is like 0, 2, 0, 1, 2. So this array index 2 is pointing actually at the third item in the array. There are lots of array methods. I won't be like explaining all of them. This is on the documentation. There are a lot of them. Very popular is join. Join, basically you can go with one array and you can join with another array. This also would work. If you just pass a single value, it will be just added to this array as a last. It will work like push. We can reverse an array. We can sort arrays, but this sort, you need to check documentation because it doesn't work how you expect it. It sorts kind of in the literal way. So for example, 11 will be first before 2 because it will see the 1 as a so it doesn't work like we would want to. Actually, I made a mistake saying you this. What I meant here, join, is something different. Concatening array to array is concatening arrays and item. This is what I meant. So you can concat two arrays together with this concat function, and join. It's a different thing. It's also very simple. So, for example, if you have you split something into array, so if you have string split on the strings, and here I think you defined how they should be splitted. and in return we receive an array. So yes, and let's see what was this array. And array join we return as a string. Two, probably, and this is the separator. So if we put here, this is what will be between these items. So if we put something like J, we make a typo. This is how it's const. So string 2. So as you can see, the join method does this. We have our members of our array A, B, C, A, B, C, and whatever you put in the join method will be separating the items from the array. Yeah, so my bad. Actually, I use a lot of times this join method. It's, for example, if you want to reverse string, the easiest way how you can reverse the string is just split this string and then reverse, because this is an array. So you reverse items in the array, and then you join it together back as a reversed string, for example. Concat, yeah, usually I do when I have, it's an older method. Right now we have better even syntax. Arrays. We have slice, splice. The difference is the name is very similar, and it's that's quite confusing. But the difference here is that one returns the array. We have return, and one doesn't touch the array. So this array won't be touched, and the operation here will be assigned to this subarray, and splice actually does something to the array which is operates. I see my screen is blinking. I'm not sure why. Right, if you have any technical issues here. Yeah. If there's any technical issue, let me know, because this is recorded and I don't wanna just saying all this in vain. So yeah, there's a lot, and you should like not memorize all of them. You just need to kind of know that some methods does this, and you just Google this and go to Mozilla developer page, and then you see this. Because for example, this slice and splice, it was confusing for me so many times. I finally realized that splice kind of destroys something. Splicing is like, you know, squashing something very hard. So I was kind of thinking that this is like doing something with this, and slice is like maybe only cutting. It's not that damage, not so many damage. And finally, this way, I finally remember that we actually don't touch this array, which are yeah, we're just receiving a new thing. Now let's go. Arrays mapping and filtering. So we have a lot of ways how we can map and filter arrays. That's why it's so important sometimes just to change our object into some kind of array, just like take keys and then with the key, grabbing the values from the operate on this array, and then grabbing the values from the object. We have loops that are for in, for off loop. We have methods which can iterate over the array. It's for example for each, and map. They are very important, and the big difference between these two is that for each changes the array which we are operating on it, and the map doesn't. The map, it's the one which just operates. It works very similar to just looping over the array. Under the hood, actually, a lot of these methods are actually loops, but map is very important from this functional perspective. Or if you try to program and don't mutate the data, you just want to always receive a new data from the old one. So you don't use for each, you use map. There's also filtering methods: filter, reduce, includes, find, every. These methods, I will show you like one example. We'll follow this link. And so we have like find, and these methods, so we have some array, and these methods, some of these methods expect from us to which we'll be doing. So for example, the find function expect from us some kind of function. It doesn't have to look like this. It can be any function. The arrow function in general looks like this, and this is here only just because it looks better. This is short syntax, and this function in the parentheses will receive as a parameter. It will be called for every single element, and this element will be passed to this callback function as a parameter. And then we can do whatever we pleased with this whatever we pleased. And if we don't want to write inside this curly braces like return statement, we can go even for shorter syntax. And this means that it will be returned. So, and this actually, if we have only one parameter, this also doesn't have to be here. And find. So I'm writing here that this element which we want to find should be larger than, let's say, 129. And yes, so I run this function. This is actually from the previous one. So this find function is expecting what we write here. I mean, is when the condition is met here, it will return the value. This is how the find function works. For example, the find method works. For example, and there are lots of information, for example, about this find function. To fully understand, don't worry if you don't get this, because you actually need to like go over these examples, write some of them, and then finally you can understand the find function. But the good news is that most of them work very, very similar. So they also expect some kind of callback function here. And for example, if we put a every function here, every, like the name suggests, will expect to check if every element inside this array will meet some condition. And again, we can specify this condition here. Every probably will return false or true, because this is just checking, is every element on this array meets this condition. So probably, yes, this is false, but what about every element bigger than 0? It's true. Yes, this is true. Every element, so it checks like one element by one and checks if this is true. If every for every element is true, it will return true, and so on and so on. So there are methods, and you just filter and interact with this data like this. All this actually can be implemented in for loops. We can write this code, but this is just smarter, and it's in the language. It's really nice way to code like this with this function. We can also chain this function. This is really also good. So you can like map something, then you can reduce something, and then you can. Yes, one of the most important, if I were to pick 3 most important functions and methods for arrays, definitely you need to go for map. Sorry, you go for map, filter, and reduce. These are the most important and mostly used methods in the context, especially in the context of functional programming, which is a big deal, especially for React developers. But yeah, actually, this is also used in Angular, so in general, in JavaScript. So yes, mapping. So we also have the structuring assignment. And this may look a bit esoteric, but what is happening here, we kind of create. So this particular example kind of switches the values. So if we have some values, x is 1 and y is 2, and we want to swap them around. And that was very, very often used in some kind of sorting algorithms. When we wrote just by ourselves the sorting thing, we wanted to have some kind. We had to use this temporal variable, which kind of store. Then we kind of move these things around here. With this the structuring assignment, we can. Here we basically create an array. And this array has 2 items. Here's 1 and here's 2. And that's it. On the other side, we could write here like even const. I would like put here or let. If I put let here, it means that from this array, I'm taking this values. So first values, and I'm assigning this to the variable y. And here's x. The structuring assignment is for also for objects and for arrays. We are running out of time. I won't show you the example in the code, but just you know, you need to the structuring. It's I don't know if there was ES6 or probably ES6 feature, and you need to for sure understand and learn this, how to quickly and easy assign something from the object or from our arrays. And this is the structuring code like this. We can also delete elements on arrays, but this is not perfect we shouldn't actually delete things inside arrays or objects. When we are writing application, we don't do this. This is really error prompt. So we just basically, if we change something, we need to return a new one. And splice also. So this is a mutation, but we should deal with data in the unmutable way. Sets, it's a collection with unique members. So basically, if we, it's another like data structure, but it's like we have, if we put to the set not unique members, they will be just ignored. So this is creation of set. And as far as I saw in the documentation, this is another thing where we just use this new set, this new operator, and it's fine. Here how it does set look after creation. Yeah, it doesn't contain this freeze. Functions. You will go deeper into functions in few lectures. There are actually like 2 streams dedicated only functions, so I'm only mentioning here. And one thing is like we have function declaration and function expression. I was always confused about this, but expression is actually like express, and express is a train, and train goes on the tracks, and this looks like tracks, so this is expression. So this is the way how you can memorize what is the expression and what is the statement. And now type coercion. So we need to coerce our values to another type, like such as string to number, object to Boolean, and so on. We actually spoke a little bit about this before. And very often this may happen automatically. So we kind of talked about how we can convert one type into another. Very often happens automatically. Sorry, just. For example, when JavaScript sees this plus operator between 5 string and 9, it will try to do despite the fact that we don't add strings to numbers, and it will return some value. Some of this are more like reasonable, some of this is not that reasonable. I don't know how much we should know, but right now with the TypeScript, we don't deal with this kind of situation because probably this will be some kind of 59. We can see. Yeah, 11. So in this example, JavaScript converted this to string into string and created this kind of string. It's not the best thing. I believe that this is very confusing. There are lots of examples and cases, but basically I don't deal with this kind of situation when I'm working in TypeScript, and every typed language doesn't also allow for this kind of operations. And for there are 2 ways how we can compare compare variable values in JavaScript. One is equality, and the second is identity. This is also called like strict identity. And what they do, you probably heard like one checks only the value, the second is checking only like one is checking type and value, and the second is checking only the type of. But actually in the documentation is that they both check first. They first check the type. So, and how they deal with this result, it's different. So in this case, here the first check is the type, and when it sees when this operator sees, oh, the type is different, it will try convert them into the same type. So it does type comparison and then this conversion of the type. And the triple equal operator does the same thing, but it will behave different. First, it will check the type, and if the type is different, then it will automatically return the false. And that's it. It doesn't go any deeper. And then it goes to the step 2 and compares the actual values. Yeah, so this is okay. Unusual operators. I think this is a bit more fun. So if you plus operator, so you can concat or add two strings. And this is mathematical operator, but you can still concat these two operators, and you will receive the whole as one string. The second use of plus operator is where I mentioned if you want to convert a string into number, you can try do this with the plus operator. And if you are sure that here inside the string are only numbers, this is actually a very good way to convert into the number. In is very nice keyword to check if something is inside the object. Because, for example, you can use this in if statement. You have, for example, you can go like in the if statement, you put just x in A. So it will return true if the x is actually on the object. However, if there is, for example, so how does it look? For example, if we check some value in the conventional way. So, for example, the object name and the x, and we cannot check if there is this key, if there's some value, for example, if we do this. Here. And now, if we, for example, checking on this property on the object, and this is like if statement, and we put something like just object dot x, this actually will be the false value. So it won't go here. But instead, we can just because we cannot simply go like this, because it will be, this doesn't make sense, because x would be like accepted. But sometimes we check something if on the object it's something do something. But actually this won't work, because if the value is falsy, let me illustrate you. So it is on the object. So if yeah, this should be as a string, of course. So oops. And despite the fact that we have this property on this object, because this is nullish value, it will go as a false and displays as the else statement. So this actually does the trick and solves this problem with falsy values in the objects. Double ampersand signed. We use this a lot for now. It's if we want to check if something really exists. So this object, and in this line, actually, we are like kind of sure that this object exists, but we are not sure if first property exists on this object. If we are not sure, so this operator will go into this part. So first, this is checked, and if this is, for example, undefined, here we go undefined value, and will not even go to this part. And this is important. Why? Because, for example, there's like a function, and we want to call it, and instead of undefined assigned here, if we didn't use this and we just try to straight go ahead and just call, for example, this function, let's assume that this is function, we will get an error, and that will can stop our program, for example. But this will be solved in the better way. This is a new JavaScript syntax. So this operator, this is optional chaining, and this is new thing in JavaScript, but it's already present in TypeScript as a new feature. So this means that if this is existing, go for this. I mean, the whole thing will be executed like object first dot second, but this is optional chaining. This is very handy thing, very clear syntax. It does the same thing like here, but in the much more clear syntax. This do 2 stars is actually a nicer way to write power. So that will be 3 power 2, which is 9, and here is exactly the same thing. So this is just equivalent of this thing. Comments, very simple thing. We have multi-line comments and single-line comments. So everything from here to here will be a comment. And evil is it's a way how you can execute JavaScript from string. So just look at this part. This is string. But inside the string, it's actually a valid JavaScript. we have written alert, which takes string, and it's actually JavaScript, but it's as a string. So eval function allows us to execute the JavaScript as a string, but we shouldn't use it. And this is taken from JavaScript documentation, that this kind of coding creates enormous security risks. So they just say never use eval. And I didn't find the actually ever need to use it. Embedding scripts in HTML, yeah, you can embed this like a file, like a link to the file, and you can just write script inside the Java HTML file. Best resources. I believe that there are many resources. You can pick your favorite, but if you are looking for like a shorter answer, you should mostly try to use, at least try to use developer Mozilla. This is like documentation, very popular, very good, a lot of information. And when you Google something, try to pick this developer Mozilla results. And the JavaScript info, it's also, this is like it's also good, but maybe they have better description. It's not so much like documentation, but maybe more like articles, and so maybe this one. Of course, in the beginning you may find this a bit difficult. So of course, use whatever resources you pleased. Questions. Let's go over questions. Do you have guys questions? Let me come back in 3 minutes and I will answer questions. And we'll go over the questions. I will be back in just 3 minutes. Okay, guys, I'm back. Let's quickly see comments. I like actually reading your comments. Why strings are immutable? Strings are immutable by design. And why they behave like this? It's a primitive value. And every time you assign something to the string. So in short, this is how the language behaves. But why maybe like var a equals. So every time we create a string, this thing appears in the memory. And you can reassign variable or let's, but if we assign something different here, the JavaScript, the engine, it will just place this as a new thing in the new place in the memory and assign to this. So basically, this will be garbage collected and a new thing, which is a new in the new place in the memory, will be assigned to this variable. And garbage collection, I didn't mention this, but this is quite important. What is garbage collection? It's a mechanism which destroys things, destroys data, which doesn't have this pointer to it. Once data doesn't, once to some data nothing points to, it's automatically garbage collected. And it just, the strings behave like this. Yes, exactly. Maciej from Stack, yeah. Arrays are empty, but still is valid value. Yes, of course. Yeah, that's why it's true, because it's valid thing. Oh, I'm sorry, Maria. I didn't increase the text. So engine string function. Yes, we went over this. Just wait to remember where. Yes, this is basically map is just like over iterating, and filter we want to just narrow down based on some kind of conditions. So filter filters in some way, reduces. And Zanna, reduce can replace map and filter. Probably yes, we can always put some condition into reduce function, but the question is like why? Why we should implement something new inside the reducer if we have just a filter? So reduce would work like iterating, and then we would put some kind of condition into reduce, and then it would give us, and if the condition is met, we put this into this accumulator, and then we return. Yes, but that would probably be a longer syntax. Of course, you can, we can also use like loops for this that we would also implement, but In general, we try to make the code also like more readable. And if someone reads filter as a function name, as a method name, he knows that our intention is to read some kind of filtering of the data. Can you show how the JS debugging tool works? It's a good thing for the stream, but it would take like a half an hour with some good examples, and probably we don't have right now time. But if you need it, you just post this as a proposition. I can speak to, and we can just add this kind of thing. I believe that we should have some kind of debugging here. Do we have debugging? Fine. Yeah, we don't have any debugging. But this is also very important. Okay, I will ask if we can add this as a lecture, but this is as a lecture. You can debug in the dev tools. You can debug. There are also debuggers built into IDE. So this is quite important, and yeah, but this would require more time. Valiki Khan asks if operator, this optional chaining operators is already in JavaScript. It will be. It's on in the stage 4, and as I said on the previous lecture, the stage 4 is already in the language, but it's I think the ES21 will be June or July, something like this. So it's not in the language. It's not in the release. It will be very soon. What's the difference between array for each for ma? So for each changes the array, and map returns new array. So for example, if we take array for each, and inside the for each we will pass a function which, for example, multiplies by 2 every number inside this array. In return, you will have your original array with every number multiplied by 2. In the map, if you map the function, it won't happen like this. Map will just map the array, and it will try to and it will return your array. So if you map in any way, there's no point of doing this, and this is like multiplying what I said. Map, you actually need to assign array. And for each, I believe that for each, I don't use for each because this is mutates the data, but for each doesn't, it changes the original array. Come on. Mm. So if we take array, we don't. I may be mistaken here. All the syntax is because it says here method executes a provided function once for each array element. So not sure why. No. Right. So yeah, for each doesn't change. For each doesn't return any value. For example, map should return it. You see, so map returns new array, and this new array is as a second one. So this is our after mapping, but it didn't change this one. Why here? It's like it's their thing. It's weird. Just 1 second, because I'm curious why. This is element and elements times 2. Uh-huh. Okay, never mind. So for each method executes a provided function once for each element. Map returns new element. I hope that because it's taking too much time, it doesn't return. So it doesn't return. It must change the element itself on the array if it doesn't return new array. But using map, this is the way how we deal with data. They are written to memory close together. You mean I'm not sure what you mean here, but maybe the strings that are written to memory close together, maybe. One of the tasks in CodeWars was use closure. What exactly is closure? What problem close solve? So I want to use it. Closure is the way if function returns another function inside. You just imagine two functions. One is inside the another one, and apart from the function inside, there's like a variable. For example, var a equals 1. And the second function, which is inside the function, is returned. It will remember and it will have the access to this variable. To understand closure, it's you need to do a few tasks about this, read about this, but it's just because first of all, you need to understand that once the function run and then finishes the execution, everything what was inside this function, every variables, and they were not like assigned to some different outer scope, they are just disappear. Function after the execution inside what it was inside just disappear. But if we return a function from that function and assign this return function to a variable, every time we call this return function, it will have this access to this variables inside the original function. Probably what I'm saying it's a bit confusing. but this is exactly what is happening. But it's just you need to do some tasks and try to write function which return function and then call it, and you will get this. This is not a difficult concept. Okay, I'm reading here, filter map, not only single element. I'm not sure, but I was talking about these functions very long. Not sure what you mean here, then. Okay, Veronica, what is operator? What if operator is false? In the chaining, Veronica, if we chain and the false, it won't go further. But probably what is return? We can. I'm not sure what it will return. In the syntax with this ampersands, we just return, it will be just the value of this part, and probably here it should also be, but I didn't code with this operator in the JavaScript. Then the filter map seems okay. There's discussion about them. Const that for each can be changed. If you have object like array, you can declare array with const and put inside the array whatever you placed. You can change inside. You cannot assign new array to the same const, but inside whatever is happening, whatever is happening inside the array, it's fine. You cannot just reassign this to different, because it's still in the memory. Const array. Const array equals array. You can't change type of const, but you can fill array with whatever. Exactly, Maciej. But not type, but you cannot just reassign to something different. It's not only about type. You cannot even assign to different array, because that will be different place in the memory. Okay, thanks. Change elements. Thanks. I thought that I cannot change elements inside too. Yeah, so you can inside. You can change things. Yes, exactly. Strings, new number, all these things which are called primitive. Every time you assigned, you want to change, for example. What does it mean change? For primitives, if you change something, it means that they will point to different place in memory. In objects, if you change objects or array, it means you are still in the same spot in the memory. So that's why you can change. And so primitives, you cannot change as a const. Constant place in memory. Yes, other. I didn't got the last example. Halim, I didn't got the last example. You showed with for each function. The version works only with map. Okay, I didn't use that much for each. Maybe there's something. Some normal. This. What about let's see what it does. Element. It displays. So for sure we have these elements. Element is a norm. Will that work? Number. Okay, I thought that I understand for each, but no, it's something different. Shift. What about shift method? Let me just quickly, if this is, it removes the first element from array and returns. Okay, so let's still this. Words. Aha, but this is for the whole array. This is on the array method. Push. Okay, it seems that for each operates on the whole array. So it takes elements, but it doesn't change the elements itself, but it changes it can change the array. So if, for example, we are iterating and there's some condition, like with this shift method here. So we are here, we simply iterating. We have word one by one, and if there's some condition, words yeah. So if this condition is true, it will just mutate the array. I don't see many usage of this, but maybe they. And here array, if the array push, flatten, push. Yeah. So it doesn't mutate the single elements. Yeah. Okay. So that would be probably the difference, that we cannot change the particle elements. Huge explanation for each on stack. All right, so that would be the homework for me and for you guys. We can read about this here. I think yeah. Okay, so I think that will be finishing for today. Thank you very much, guys, for coming and for all your comments and questions. You too, thank you. Yeah, I really enjoy the streams and all the questions. You're very welcome. Thank you. All right. So need to finish the recording, stop recording. Thank you. Bye bye.